Hi guys, welcome to another video. Today is an all Microsoft shootout. We are pitting the Xbox Series X against the Xbox Series S. Let's get into it. Hi guys, my name is Valentine and welcome to the channel. On this channel we speak about gaming, tech and other nerdy things that I find interesting. If that's something that you like as well, please subscribe down below. It'll be great to see how quickly we can all work together to get this channel to 200 subscribers. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Now I know it's hard to believe, but the Xbox Series X and the Series S, they've both been out for nearly a whole year. Now, whilst the Xbox Series X, it's still quite hard to come by out in the wild unless you want to pay ridiculous prices on eBay or Facebook Marketplace. Here in the United Kingdom, the Series S has been in pretty good supply and it's pretty much readily available. Now, I know there's lots of similar guides out there on YouTube and online, but since I own both the consoles, I thought I would do my own take on what I found useful in knowing about the two consoles, and maybe I'll add something to you guys that are thinking of picking up one of the devices. Now, it's not a direct battle between the two consoles. After all, the Series X is overall a better console. It's more powerful, it has more storage, and it has more capabilities. So this video isn't necessarily about that, but this video is to give you the information of the two consoles, what they offer, and it'll be up to you guys to make a decision if it's worth paying that bit more, and obviously putting that effort to try and find the console if you want to go for the Series X, or if you would settle and go for the Series S. Without further ado, let's get into the comparison. Now, the first thing I want to speak about today, and that's the physical differences between the two consoles. Now, whilst both of them underneath the hood share a lot of similarities, from the outside they have their own distinctive looks. The Series X, and I'm sure you've seen all the memes about the Xbox fridge and all that kind of stuff. The Xbox Series X is essentially a black tower-like device. It can be used both in the sort of vertical standing position and also in the lying horizontal position as well. There's a neat little throwback to the original Xbox with a little green tinge that you get on the top sort of fan mesh that you can see, gives it a little distinctive look, whilst on the Xbox Series S it's a more of a different sort of minimalistic look that you get. It's all white, quite a minimal front panel. Obviously, there's no disk drive, but you cannot miss the big black fan grille that you get on the top. Just like with the Series X though, you can both use it in the standing vertical position and also in the lying horizontal position. Now, with the two consoles side by side, you can definitely see how much smaller the Xbox Series S is compared to the Series X. And in actual fact, one of the things that I will actually say about the Series X is that you do need to put a little bit of thought in where you're going to put it into your setup. I ran into an issue myself. I was going to put it downstairs in my living room into my own TV unit setup, and it turns out I couldn't do it. It was too thick for that. I kind of had to rearrange everything and swap it with my Series S and have the Series X here in my study setup. It's not the end of the world, bit of a first world problem, I know, but just have a little think about that, whether the Series X will fit into your current setups or your TV units. Now, in terms of the controllers, the Series X and the Series S have pretty much identical controllers, the only difference being the Series X gets the all black controller, the Series S gets the all white controller. If you've played on the Xbox One and you've had controllers, you'll be right at home with them. Nothing's changed too drastically. The D-pad is redesigned, there is a new share button as well, and there is a nice little addition of sort of textured grips around the back, and the triggers are a little bit more aesthetic, and they do sort of curve round for the fingers. A little bit of an addition, but it's not as a big a refresh as you get with the DualSense controller on the PS5, for example. Now, both consoles are very quiet when they're in use. Obviously, the Series X, it does have a disk drive, and I'll get on that side of things in a little second, but because it has a disk drive, it does potentially make a little bit more noise, but fan noise, I think the Series S and the Series X are very quiet, and unless you're just trying to hear something, I think it's as close to as silent gaming as we can possibly get. Now, moving on to the disk drive situation, obviously the Xbox Series S is diskless. Now, It's a digital console. And I think that's one of the things we do need to remember, because when a lot of people compare the Series S and the Series X, they concentrate on the power difference of the two consoles. And yes, that is a major point. And again, I will get onto that side of things sort of later on in the video. But the fact is that the Series S, you are totally reliant on getting all your games by download or Game Pass or getting game codes or essentially getting them downloaded to your hard drive. Whereas with a Series X, you have the flexibility of having a disk drive, and obviously you can insert game discs and install the games like that. Now with most games you do have to download extra sort of patches and stuff like that, so you still pretty much need to have an internet access. Now one of the byproducts of the Series S having no disk drive means that there's no access to used games. Now at the start of a console generation, it's not that big a deal. There's not that many games out, there's not that many used games out in circulation as well, not many people are trading the games in. Years down the line, what I love to do with my old Xbox 360, with the PS4, was to go into a game store and just look at all those games that have been released that I haven't had a chance to play, trade in some of the games that I'm not playing, and just pick up some games that I would never ever thought of picking up. And it just does introduce you to some games that fall through the cracks, and it just gives a new lease of life to older games. And unfortunately, you don't really have the same equivalent with the Xbox Series S. Now, I know there's Game Pass and you can play older games like that, but it does mean you're limited in that regard, and also for backwards compatibility as well. The only way the Xbox Series S can be backwards compatible is that obviously if you buy and download the older games. If you have older Xbox One, Xbox 360 games, majority of them will obviously run on the Series X, but unfortunately if you go for the Series S, they are pretty much useless. Now moving away from the sort of the physical aspect of the consoles and moving to sort of what's underneath the hood, and still sticking with the sort of the digital theme, you have to bear in mind that all your games will need to be installed on your hard drive. Both the consoles have new ridiculously fast SSDs, but one thing to remember is that the Xbox Series S only has a 500 gigabyte SSD. In real life, what that means, it's about 365 gigabytes thereabouts that is usable. On the Series X, that is bumped up to 1 terabyte, of which about 860 gigabytes is usable. Now, in real world use, what it means is that the Xbox Series S can hold about 7 or 8 full-size games, whereas the Xbox Series X can definitely probably hold 9 or 10. It's not the end of the world. Obviously, you can reinstall them, re-download them, but it's just one thing to bear in mind with the Series S, especially if you are thinking of getting Game Pass with the consoles. You'll constantly be having to be sort of thinking what you're going to do with the storage. Now, you can expand the storage on both the Series S and the Series X. It's round about £190 or dollars for a terabyte of expandable storage. There is a memory sort of slot on the back of both the consoles. I'm not going to go too much into that because you can do it for both of the consoles and it'll cost the exact same. Now moving on to performance, and as I said earlier on in the video, this is what the Series X is known for. It's a more expensive console, so naturally it comes with better performance. The target for the Xbox Series X is a 4K resolution, and it can do up to 120 frames per second. Now notice I say up to 120 frames per second. There's very few games that take advantage of that. Now the Series S, on the other hand, it can do also up to 120 frames per second. Again, I'm yet to see a game do that. It can do 4K, it can be upscaled to 4K, but the target resolution for the Series S is 1440p. So it is a difference, and don't get me wrong, you will see a difference if you compare the gameplay side by side, but you also have to be realistic at the price point that you get in these consoles. Now, I'll cover off price later on in the video. Now, what I will say in terms of performance, if you're playing on a bigger monitor or TV screen, anything sort of bigger than 32 inches, and you're sitting across, a living room, realistically, will you see that much of a difference? Probably not. Now, for myself, the first console that I did get when this new generation came out was the Xbox Series S. So when I moved from the Xbox One to the Series S, I saw a massive leap in performance and graphics. So don't think that the Series S is a slouch by any means. The Series S is still a really good console. However, I think the Series X does just take it to the next step. Now, if you were to compare the gameplay side by side of the Series X to the Series S, I even have a video where I actually do just that with a newly released Microsoft Flight Simulator. The link will be down in the description. The major differences between the Series X and the Series S, other than resolution, was mainly lighting and draw distances. So unless you're looking for those differences, I still think you'll have a very enjoyable experience on both the Series X and the Series S. Now, one feature of the two consoles that I absolutely love, and a feature that they both do really, really well, is Quick Resume. Now for me, Quick Resume is literally the pinnacle of the new Xboxes. It changes the way that I personally approach games. Now for those of you that don't know what Quick Resume is, it's essentially a function on both the Xboxes that allows you to play any game, switch to a completely different game, live pause the game that you've just played, have it in a suspended state, play a completely different game, and then it allows you to come back to the original game, and you can even turn the console off in between, and they literally can pick up where you left off. It allows you to play games in a completely different manner. It basically allows you to switch between 3 or 4 games within seconds, and if you don't have that much time to sort of dedicate to a game, it's a great way of just playing a game, sort of leaving it in a suspended state, and you don't have to worry about save files or anything like that. Now, I've personally found that it works exactly the same on the Series X and the Series S. I have found no differences between the two consoles. It's not a foolproof system. Sometimes it does, I think, drop off from memory and you have to reload the game, but it happens both the Series X and the Series S, and it's very rare that it does. So overall, I don't think there's actually differences between the two consoles when it comes to Quick Resume. So those are the differences in hardware between the Xbox Series X and the Series S, and also what's underneath within the consoles. However, let's talk about price. So you can't really compare the two consoles without speaking about price. Now everyone knows that Xbox Series X is the more expensive version of the console, and the Series S, people call it the budget-friendly version, some people call it the cheap version, but whatever you want to call it, it costs less than the Series X. Here in the United Kingdom, the Series X costs £449 and the Series S costs £249. So about £200 or $200. So that's kind of the difference between the two consoles. Now, as I said already, I'm not going to decide for you guys if it's worth paying that extra £200 or dollars to get the upgrade from the Series S to the Series X. There's a lot of factors that you do need to consider. As I mentioned already, the hard drive size in the Series S, it's only 500 gigabytes, whereas on the Series X, it's double that. Now, yes, you can expand the storage on the Series S, but that costs £200 for an extra terabyte. So in my opinion, if you are thinking of getting a Series S and expanding the storage straight away, that just doesn't make sense to me. I would say just go and get the Series X. Obviously, there is stock constraints. I fully understand that the Series X isn't as readily available as the Series S. But I think if you're going to be approaching the Series S and expand the storage immediately, I would just say just wait out and get the Series X. Now, on the flip side, if you're playing a monitor or even a 1080p monitor, you may want to save your money and go for the Xbox Series S, because I think at 1080p, the difference between the Series S and the Series X will be very minimal, because bear in mind the Xbox Series S, just like the Series X, can output up to 120 FPS as well. Now fundamentally, I think the decision on whether it's worth paying that extra £200 will come down to what type of gamer that you are. If you play games and you don't have that much time to commit to them, I think the Series S is phenomenal value for money, especially when you partner it with Game Pass, which I'll get onto very shortly. The Series X, it has phenomenal power, and when you compare it to an equivalent gaming PC build, you would be spending double, maybe even triple the amount of money, maybe even more, to get the equivalent output. Overall, I don't think either the console has a better price point. Obviously, this Xbox Series S is cheaper, but it does come with its own shortfalls. The Series X, it's more expensive. I think it is justified, but it was something for you to think if it is worth it for yourself. Now, the final point I want to speak about today, and it's a point I feel like you can't really not speak about if you're making a video about Xboxes nowadays, and that is Game Pass. Now, for those of you that don't know, and I don't think there'll be many of you, Game Pass is essentially a subscription service that you pay monthly and you get access to a wide library of different games. Third-party releases, older sort of retro games from the Xbox 360, from the Xbox originals. You get all Microsoft first-party games on day one release as well, which is brilliant and crazy when you think about some of the franchises that you get, like Halo, Forza, Gears of War. It's crazy. And now you get games such as Outriders, that was a day one release on Xbox Game Pass, and games like Football Manager as well become a day one release. I think it's definitely the future of gaming. Now, when you couple that value of Game Pass with the Xbox Series S, I think you are then truly onto something really special. Because I think with the Xbox Series S, it definitely opens up the world of Xbox to people that may not necessarily have thought of getting into the Xbox ecosystem. I personally know people that are very well into the PlayStations, into the PS5s, and have picked up the Xbox Series S as a Game Pass machine. If you go for the Xbox Series S and go for 2 years worth of Game Pass Ultimate, which you can do on the Xbox All Access program, it pretty much equates to just over £500 for the 2 years, which is just £50 more than the value of the Series X. So essentially, for 2 years, you're getting a brand new Series S console that has next-gen performance and all the Xbox and Microsoft exclusive on day one release, and plenty of third-party titles to play from. So I think that is phenomenal value, and I honestly can't make a video about the Series X and the Series S without speaking about Game Pass. Now, obviously you have Game Pass on the Series X, but for me the true value of Game Pass is unlocked with the Xbox Series S, because I think that package works so well together, and like I said, I think it just opens up the Xbox ecosystem to literally millions of people that would never have thought about picking up an Xbox. So there you go, guys, that's my overview of the Xbox Series X against the Series S. As I said, I don't have a preference, and I think it's an individual choice of what you go for. Please leave a comment down below if you're thinking of going for either of the consoles, and let me know why you went for a particular one. I would love to see some of the reasons why people are going for each of the individual consoles. Please subscribe down below. There's a lot more content coming over the coming weeks about the Xbox Series X, the Series S, the PS5 as well, even some PC gaming things as well. So thanks very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.